Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been close to my mom. We've been through a lot together, especially after my dad passed away a few years ago. It's just been the two of us against the world. So when my aunt suggested we all take a trip together, I thought it might be nice for mom to spend time with her sister. Little did I know what a nightmare it would turn into. My aunt has always been a bit difficult. She's the kind of person who thinks the world owes her something. But I never realized how bad it was until we actually started planning this trip. From the beginning, it was a headache. My aunt wanted to stay at fancy hotels but didn't want to pay for them. She kept hinting that I should cover the extra costs. I work hard for my money, and I'm not made of cash. Plus, I was already paying for my mom's share since she's on a fixed income. Things really started to go downhill when we actually left for the trip. Yesterday, we were at the train station, and I bought tickets for me and mom. I asked my aunt to buy her own ticket, and you'd think I'd asked her to give me a kidney. My aunt complained about having to buy her own ticket. She asked why I couldn't just get it for her. I explained that I was already covering mom's expenses, and it was only fair for her to pay for her own ticket. She got upset and called me stingy. I didn't want to argue, so I just ignored her tantrum. But later, back at the hotel, when I asked what time we were going out again, she snapped at me like I was some kind of servant. She told me we'd go out when she was ready and to stop pestering her. This morning was the last straw. We were sorting out the breakfast vouchers, and my mom noticed that the dates might be mixed up. She was worried we wouldn't be able to get our free breakfast the next day. When she tried to point this out to my aunt, you'd think my mom had insulted her entire family line. My aunt got defensive, saying she knew how to read a simple voucher and told us to stop treating her like she was stupid. I stepped in, telling her she didn't have to be rude and that mom was just trying to help. She accused us of ganging up on her and said we had no respect for our elders. That's when I lost it. All the frustration from the past few days just came pouring out. I asked her about respect, bringing up how she had accused me of trying to profit off the hotel reservations. I mentioned how she expected me to be at her beck and call, even though I was there to help my mom who had a hand injury. I reminded her of all the times she'd gotten offended when I bought something for mom but not for her, even though she never paid me back in full when she said she would. My aunt denied everything, claiming I was making it all up. I continued asking about her constant complaints about the accommodations while not wanting to pay for anything better. I questioned if she expected me to cover the difference. My aunt's face turned red, and she stormed off without another word. My mom, always the peacekeeper, turned to me with that look in her eyes. She suggested that maybe I should apologize, reminding me that my aunt was family. I refused, telling mom I was done, apologizing for standing up for myself and done letting my aunt treat us like this. My mom sighed, but I could see a hint of pride in her eyes. She knew I was right, even if she was too kind to say it out loud. My aunt spent the rest of the trip sulking and giving us the silent treatment. But you know what? It was the most peaceful part of the whole vacation. When we got home, I made it clear that I wouldn't be traveling with her again anytime soon. Sometimes family can be the most entitled people of all, but that doesn't mean we have to put up with it. This trip might have been a disaster, but at least it taught me a lot about self-respect. I'm a 35-year-old father of twin girls, both 7 years old. My wife and I have been married for 10 years, and we've worked hard to build a stable, loving home for our family. I'm an architect, and my wife is a pediatric nurse. We're not rich, but we're comfortable, and we've always prioritized our daughter's well-being. My sister, on the other hand, is a different story altogether. She's 2 years younger than me, and she's been a constant source of stress and worry for our family. Since her teenage years, she's struggled with addiction and has never been able to hold down a job for more than a few months. Our parents tried everything to help her, but nothing seemed to work. Eventually, they had to cut her off financially for their own well-being. I've always tried to be there for her, offering support and encouragement, but it's been a one-way street. She'd come around when she needed money or a place to crash, but she'd disappear as soon as things got tough or we tried to set boundaries. When our daughters were born, my wife and I made a decision to limit my sister's involvement in their lives. We didn't want them exposed to her chaotic lifestyle or the constant disappointment of an unreliable aunt. It was a tough choice, but we felt it was necessary for our children's safety and emotional well-being. Now, fast forward to about a month ago. My sister showed up at our doorstep out of the blue, looking surprisingly put together. I was cautiously optimistic, hoping that maybe she'd finally turned a corner. But that hope was quickly shattered when she opened her mouth. My sister greeted me cheerfully, asking if we could talk. I agreed and invited her in, asking what was going on. She explained that she'd been thinking a lot lately and realized she needed a purpose in life. She thought she had found it. When I asked if she was thinking about going back to school or starting a new job, she said no. She told me she wanted to be a mom. I responded that it was a big decision and asked if she'd thought about how she'd support a child. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She wanted me to give her one of my daughters. My sister, who couldn't even take care of herself, wanted me to hand over one of my children like they were some sort of commodity. I told her she was out of her mind and that it wasn't happening, ever. She tried to argue, saying I had two daughters and could spare one, that she was family and lonely, and this would solve both our problems. I told her there was no problem except the one she was creating, that my daughters weren't objects to be given away, and ended the conversation. Over the next few weeks, my sister kept showing up trying to convince us. She'd corner my wife at the grocery store, ambush me after work, and even tried to guilt our parents into pressuring us. Each time we shut her down more firmly, but she just wouldn't let it go. The situation came to a head when I got a call from my daughter's school. The secretary sounded worried. She told me that a woman claiming to be my sister was trying to pick up one of my daughters early. The school wasn't comfortable releasing the child to her as she wasn't on the approved list. My heart nearly stopped. I told them I was on my way and to keep my sister there if possible. I've never driven so fast in my life. When I arrived at the school, I found my sister arguing with the principal outside the office. My sister was insisting to the principal that she was their aunt and had every right to take her niece home. I interrupted, saying she absolutely did not have that right. My sister turned to me and tried to get me to tell the school it was okay for her to take one of the girls home. I accused her of trying to kidnap my child. The principal asked if they should call the police. I was tempted, believe me, but some misguided sense of family loyalty held me back. I told the principal I'd handle it, but I wanted it on record that my sister wasn't allowed near my children at school ever again. I then turned to my sister and gave her a final warning. I told her to stay away from my family, and that if she ever tried something like this again, I wouldn't hesitate to get the law involved. I asked if she understood me. She didn't say anything, just glared at me before storming off. I took my daughters home early that day, trying to calm their confusion and fear. My wife and I spent the evening discussing security measures and whether we needed to move. A week later, I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from my daughter's room. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. I bolted out of bed and ran to their room, my wife right behind me. What I saw made my blood run cold. My sister was there, trying to drag one of my daughters across the floor. The girl was kicking and screaming, while her sister watched in horror from her bed. I started to yell at my sister, asking what the hell she was doing. But before I could finish, I saw a blur of movement beside me. My wife, armed with a baseball bat we kept for home defense, swung with all her might. There was a sickening thud as the bat connected with my sister's head. She crumpled to the floor, unconscious. I scooped up both my daughters, holding them close as they sobbed. My wife, still gripping the bat, was shaking. She told me she'd call the police. The next few hours were a blur. Police and paramedics arrived. My sister was taken to the hospital while I gave my statement, insisting on pressing charges. The officers were sympathetic, assuring us that my wife's actions were clearly self-defense. It wasn't until the next day that we learned the full extent of what happened. The blow to my sister's head had caused severe brain damage. She was in a coma, and the doctors weren't sure if she'd ever fully recover. In the weeks that followed, we focused on healing. Our daughter started therapy to deal with the trauma and made plans to move to a new home in a gated community. My sister eventually woke up from her coma, but she wasn't the same person. The brain damage had affected her memory and cognitive functions. In a twist of fate, she now needed full-time care herself. Our parents took on the responsibility of her care. The sister who had caused so much chaos in our lives was gone, replaced by someone who could no longer hurt us, but who also couldn't be the sister I had always hoped she'd become. It was a harsh lesson about boundaries and the lengths we'd go to protect our family. I never expected to work in customer service, especially in the retentions department of a major phone company. I found myself at Red Phone dealing with entitled customers trying to game the system. One Monday morning I encountered the executive. His arrogant tone immediately set him apart. He demanded I fix his ridiculous bill, threatening to cancel his service otherwise. As I investigated his account, I overheard him bragging to his girlfriend about manipulating idiots like me. My blood boiled, but I remained professional. His account revealed a pattern of abuse. He had our highest plan but paid only a third of the cost due to stacked discounts. His current bill was 1,500 euros, mostly from roaming charges. Just a month earlier, he'd had a 600 euro bill waived using the same excuse. I explained that we couldn't waive the charges again, as he'd been previously informed about our roaming policies. He argued that if we did it once, we could do it again, calling our prices highway robbery. When I refused to comply, he insisted on escalation, even threatening to charge us for wasting his time. That's when I decided to give him exactly what he asked for, just not how he expected. I opened a claim to review his bill, copying notes from his previous claim that proved he knew about roaming charges. I also noticed his discount stacking violated our policy, and attempting to defraud the company was grounds for termination. After consulting my supervisor, I informed the executive that due to his complaints and account history, the claim had been flagged for review by our fraud department. I warned that his account could be terminated for violating our terms of service. His tone changed instantly from demanding to panicked. He frantically tried to get me to close the claim, but I explained that it was now out of my hands. He threatened my job before abruptly hanging up. A week later, I learned the executive had his account terminated. The fraud department found evidence of multiple policy violations and attempts to manipulate the system. I've since moved on, but I'll never forget the executive who thought he was too clever for his own good. In the end, his entitlement cost him much more than just a phone bill. It's 2018, and I'm a single guy in my late 20s, finally making decent money after years of being broke. I decided to try out this popular dating app everyone's talking about. You know the one, swipe right, swipe left, that whole deal. I've been using the free version for a while, but one night after a few beers and feeling a bit lonely, I thought, hey, why not try the paid features? It was only $6.99 for a week. No big deal, right? I click through, enter my credit card info, and boom, I'm a premium member. Now, I'll admit I didn't read the fine print. I just assumed it was a one-time thing. Rookie mistake, I know. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and I'm not impressed. The paid features aren't much better than the free ones. I stop using the app, delete it from my phone, and forget all about it. 3 months later, I'm checking my bank statement and notice a weird charge. $6.99 to Social Media Inc. every week. And I'm like, what the hell is this? After some digging, I realize it's that damn dating app. I try to cancel the subscription, but of course, it's not that simple. I download the app again, look for a way to unsubscribe. Nothing. I follow their help links, which are about as helpful as a chocolate teapot. Finally, I find an email address and write to them. Their response? Let's just say it wasn't exactly customer friendly. I sent them an email explaining that I was having trouble canceling my subscription and asked for help. Their response was unhelpful, just telling me to follow the instructions in their help section. I replied, explaining that I had tried that but the instructions didn't match what I was seeing on my screen. I asked for more detailed steps. Again, their response was dismissive, insisting their instructions were clear and up to date, and I should just try again. This back and forth went on for a week. I was getting more and more frustrated, and they were getting more and more dismissive. Finally, they told me to update the app. Turns out there was a bug in their system. But did they apologize? Nope. By this point, I've wasted hours on this nonsense. I asked for a $45 refund for the weeks I didn't even have the app installed. Their response was a flat-out refusal, stating they don't offer refunds for unused time and that my subscription was active regardless of whether I used the app or not. Now I'm pissed. I decide to do some digging in Google class action lawsuit against dating app. Lo and behold, there's a law firm not far from me filing a complaint about this exact issue. I call them up, leave a message, and an hour later, I'm talking to a lawyer who's super interested in my story. They ask me to send over some documents, bank statements, app store records, a written account of what happened. I put it all together in a neat little PDF and send it off. A week later, I'm in a second interview with two lawyers. They're loving my story and ask if I want to be the lead plaintiff in their class action lawsuit. I think, why not? Let's stick it to these jerks. For the next 2.5 years, I spend maybe 20-30 hours total on this case. Mostly phone calls, one in-person meeting. It's not a huge time commitment, but it's enough to keep me in the loop. Then, out of the blue, I get a call. The lawyers are ecstatic. This big tech company, with all its fancy lawyers, has caved. They have agreed to a $23 million settlement. Now, I didn't get rich off this. I got a modest 4-figure incentive award for being the lead plaintiff. But you know what? It felt good. It felt damn good to stand up to these corporate bullies. The lawyers were over the moon. They invited me to get in touch if I ever ran into any other injustices like this. Unfortunately, most tech companies have wised up and added arbitration clauses to their terms, so it might be a one-time thing. Now, whenever I feel like a company is trying to take advantage of me, I have a little speech ready. I tell them that I'm not just some pushover customer, that standing up for consumer rights has become a hobby of mine and I'm pretty good at it. I explain that I don't mind businesses making a fair profit, but if they try to squeeze me, I promise it won't be worth their time. And if they think I'm bluffing, I tell them to Google my name and the dating app's name. You should see how quickly they change their tune. It's like magic. My girlfriend thinks it's a bit much sometimes, but hey, somebody's got to keep these companies in check, right? So that's my story. From a naive guy who didn't read the fine print to the lead plaintiff in a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit. All because some greedy dating app thought they could get away with sneaky subscription tactics. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.